Hi there, it's Jim. Let's take a look at a past exam question. This time we're taking or having a go at a 25 mark question from paper one. And this was whether or not retailers will all move to e commerce as it becomes more popular. Let's take a look at this question. So here it is, the question on the screen now. Will the increased use of e commerce lead to all retailers operating only online? 25 marks. So at 25 marker, we know any question with 16 marks or above is going to need evaluation. So really the question here is, how do we answer this efficiently? How do we express a balanced and supported judgment and not drift into 5 or 6 or 7 pages of stuff about e-commerce? That's the challenge with the 25 markers, to say really focus on the demands of the question and to give the examiner a clear steer as to our response. As always, we unpick the question. So clearly it's about e-commerce, isn't it? That's what needs to be the feature and the focus of our response, demonstrating knowledge and understanding of that as we go. And in terms of our arguments that then lead to a judgment, it's really, are retailers going to move to online only? That's the question. So we know that we need to have a judgment at the end, a conclusion, but we also know it needs to be balanced. It needs to be supported by our arguments. And it needs to focus on that key evaluation hook, isn't it? Will increased use of e-commerce lead to all retailers operating only online? Now, clearly the answer is no. It won't lead to all retailers operating online. However, it might lead to more or some, or retailers moving more of their business online. So we know what the answer is, but the question is, how do we then construct a good response? Hopefully get us as a level 4 or level 5 response, get some good marks. Well, as always with the 25 markers, it's not about what you know, it's about what you use, isn't it? So you need to stay focused on maybe 1 or 2 aspects of the question that enable you to develop some balanced arguments and then develop a conclusion which adds some value to the question. So on the one hand, we might consider factors which are driving increased use of e-commerce. As e-commerce grows, we know that there is increasing availability and widespread availability and relatively easy access by retailers, large and small, to e-commerce, either themselves operating their own e-commerce software integrated into their systems, or using platforms such as Amazon or eBay or Etsy or whatever. Clearly, the growth of online, the growth of e-commerce is giving those retailers that use it much greater insights and data into what customers are looking for, what they're buying and what prices they're buying, how they're finding the business. An e-commerce store is available provided the website is working 24/7. And clearly, retailers who embrace e-commerce can reach a much wider, larger, potentially target audience, potentially easier to find customers in niches as well, doesn't it? So lots of good reasons why retailers may wish to move some or all of their operations online. However, we also know that the reality is that there are factors that just restrain that a bit, don't they? They push the retailers back. So, what are the factors that might just persuade a retailer not to go purely online? Well, I think one really important one is customers want choice. Sure, they want to buy online, but they also want to buy in physical stores. Shopping, retail is a service experience. It's a leisure experience for many. Therefore, customers want that, and they also want the ability to be able to buy across what I would call multi-channel, so online, store, and in other ways as well. Not every product is particularly well suited to e-commerce. Most are, but not everyone is. And also, it's not cheap to run e-commerce effectively, particularly as you scale up significant investments in things like warehousing and fulfillment. So there are some reasons why retailers may not all go online. Question is, what do you use? So we don't want an answer that brings in dozens and dozens of poorly developed points. We just want to stay focused on the question in that sort of 20 minutes or so of writing, no more than that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a look through a suggested answer. It's by no means the only way to answer this question, but hopefully it demonstrates how you can write an efficient answer that meets the demands of the question and hopefully gets a level 4, maybe even a level 5 mark, which is well above average. I've split it into 4 sections here. A 1-line introduction, because the examiners have said that students in the 25 markers that introduce their response often signal their intent and start to showcase to the examiner that they've thought about and planned their response. I'm then going to develop one argument and a counter argument. So there's my balance, my arguments, and then I'm going to go through a judgment and hopefully spend enough time on that judgment and add some value to it too. So let's have a look. Well, here's my first line, nothing more than a sentence, I think, is an introduction. And I'd only do this once I'd planned my answer. So 2 or 3 minutes planning is really important. So let's have a look. Whilst operating purely online might be a good option for a few retailers, for most retailers, a multi-channel rather than pure e-commerce approach is likely to remain the most popular way to do business, even as e-commerce grows. So to the examiner, I've just signposted and said, yeah, there are some situations where some retailers will be purely online only, but most won't. So what I now need to do is to show some points, arguing for that or arguing the counter argument before I get to my conclusion. So let's have a look. Now, it doesn't really matter how you do this. I've gone with trying to make the case for why retailers may operate only online to start with, even though my conclusion argues that some may, but most won't. So here we go. So there are several factors that are pushing retailers to use e-commerce more. 2 key driving forces, bit of Lewin's force field analysis, driving forces are costs and customer needs. So I wanted to, there were two important points there, but I wanted to deal with them in one paragraph. So let's deal with costs first. Technology solutions are now widely available to enable even the smallest retailer to sell using e-commerce at much lower fixed costs than running a physical store. For example, a retailer selling niche gift products via e-commerce platforms such as Amazon and Etsy may find its break-even sales revenue is much lower as it's not paying fixed costs such as store rent and business rates, which therefore reduces the risk of making a loss, even though the gross margin might be less on these platforms because of selling fees. So there's a reason why more retailers may move to online. Lower cost, less risk, lower break even. And one more, so meeting customer needs is another factor that's pushing retailers towards e-commerce. So customers expect to be able to buy 24/7, on the move or at home, and that creates opportunities for retailers who can reach the target customers easier and around the world rather than relying on passing shoppers. Of course, that's not to say that operating e-commerce is easy for retailers and that the continued development of e-commerce features will mean that retailers need to keep investing to take advantage of these lower costs and customer needs, which not every retailer is able to do. So let's just unpick the technique there. So there's my 1 point. I'm basically saying there are some factors pushing for e-commerce. That's it. I've set the point up and I actually developed 2, don't I? Cost and customer needs. I've done a bit of such as seasoning there. So, for example, a retailer selling gift products on platforms such as Amazon and Etsy. So my application is there. I've used the word selling fees, which is common to those e-commerce platforms. So a little bit of application there. And then right at the end, I've added a point included evaluation. So, of course, the argument basically says retailers will move more to e-commerce. But then the evaluation says, of course, it's not easy. They may not all do it. So a little bit of evaluation as we go. So let's look at my second argument. I need some balance here. So this argument says, well, no, but for most retailers, though, a multi-channel approach, i.e. not purely online, a multi-channel approach will continue to be used even as e-commerce grows. 2 key reasons are customer needs and efficiency. So let's deal with those 2. Customers expect to be able to choose how they buy, and by offering this choice, retailers are more likely to maximize sales and profits in total. For example, almost every high street retailer now offers shoppers the option to click and collect, where orders are placed online but picked up in store. Shoppers at clothing retailers such as Next and North Face, my favorite brand, can try garments on and in the store and either buy them then or later online with the customer details stored whichever channel they decide to use. So by offering this choice, retailers may feel they're offering a better customer service. Therefore, you're meeting customer needs. What about the efficiency point? Why is it that a multi-channel approach is more efficient? Well, by using a combination of online and offline channels, retailers can spread their inventory and reduce the cost of storing and shipping products. Additionally, having physical stores lets retailers offer options like in-store pickup or product returns, which can save on shipping costs and also increase customer satisfaction. So there's another reason why retailers like to have these physical stores and not just go purely online. So I've developed my analysis there, but a little bit of evaluation at the end. Of course, this is not to say that using multi-channel distribution is easy, and the success of the approach will depend on the extent to which customers really want that seamless shopping experience, or whether they just prefer to buy online for some products. So clearly, a multi-channel won't necessarily always work. But I think that's a reasonable argument that says no. That's a reason why not all retailers will always operate online only. Now, 6 or 7 minutes for each of the arguments, then I need to leave 10 minutes for my conclusion. Oh, before I do it, there we go. There's a bit of there's the exam technique highlighted. A little bit of application. There we go. We've got some such as seasoning in there. So shoppers at clothing retailers such as Next and North Face. Insert your favorite retail brands to gain the application marks using words like garments rather than products. In-store pickup, customer returns. It just roots the response in the right context, isn't it? Talking about retailers. So over to my conclusion now, the last bit. I've done my one-line intro. I've made the case for why some retailers may decide to go purely online, why some won't. They'll stay multi-channel. And I've picked those points. I could have picked others, but I now need to come back to the question. So this is the most important part of the 25 marker. It's coming back to the question and answering it, justifying why. But the most important thing to remember is you need to add some value in your conclusion, not by bringing in new points, but by adding some application, by giving the examiner a little bit more, maybe keep some of your examples back to use in your conclusion. So let's have a look. To conclude, it's unlikely that all retailers will operate only online, because that was the question, wasn't it? But that's not to say that more retailers won't try to increase their e-commerce sales, or that new retailers won't start out as purely online businesses. So I've answered the question. But however, for most retailers, e-commerce will continue to be just one part of a multi-channel approach, albeit an increasingly important one. Now, I'm using the AGM method here. I justify this because multi-channel retailing meets customer needs these days, and it provides an effective way for retailers to maximize their sales. Indeed, I'm thinking, okay, so let's bring in a bit more application here. Even pure online retailers such as Amazon have decided that operating purely online is not the only way. Amazon has opened bricks and mortar stores in recent years, including Amazon Books, Amazon Go convenience stores. They also bought Whole Foods, didn't they? The supermarket. Should have used that maybe. Similarly, fashion retailer Boohoo has acquired several fashion brands, including Oasis and Coast, which have their own physical stores, which means that Boohoo can expand into the physical retail market without having to operate its own stores. But they've clearly decided that it's not just about being online only. Of course, there will always be some retailers, so a bit of balance here, such as ASOS and Ocado, that will continue to operate only online. And they may benefit from the wider use of e-commerce. However, don't expect the high street or shopping malls to be abandoned by retailers anytime soon. So I've answered the question with my first sentence, the AGM method, to conclude it's unlikely that all retailers will operate only online, because that's always going to be the answer, isn't it? It's got to be the answer. However, showing some balance, that's not to say that some won't. I justify, and I think the main justification is that online only just doesn't really offer the kind of choice that customers want. They want multi-channel. I've added in that red bit, some extra application to help add some value to my conclusion. And then I've just signed off with quite an interesting little phrase at the end that says, look, yeah, shopping malls aren't going to close, are they? There's always going to be people, retailers who want to operate proper stores rather than online only. It adds a little bit of gloss to what I hope is a decent answer to this question.